Hello, good evening. My name is Ibarra, and I'm going to present what is Evidence 3 and its content is about globalization, unipolar world. Hope you enjoy and learn a lot. First of all, we're going to analyze some events of the last decades. As in 1981, there was the end of the Persian Gulf War. The United States won the war against Iraq, but suddenly began invading Baghdad. Then Gorbachev resigns the presidency. This was in Russia. The communist hardliners attempt to remove Gorbachev from power, but the action fails. Gorbachev then resigns as president. The USSR dissolves into 15 different and separate republics. The Warsaw Pact for military protection is disintegrated, and Boris Yeltsin is then elected as the president of the Russian Republic. In the South African parliament, it was then annulled the apartheid laws. The vote repealed the legal framework of apartheid and began the process that will abolish apartheid as whole. Many members of the white electorate wanted to adhere to the privileges afforded to them under apartheid. Then, on 1982, Presidents Bush and Yeltsin declared an official end to the Cold War. The Soviet Union itself dissolved into its component republics, and with stunning speed, the Iron Curtain was lifted and the Cold War came to an end. Then, Bill Clinton is elected President of the United States. This was the presidential election of 1992, and it was the 52nd quadrennial presidential election. Democratic Governor Bill Clinton of Arkansas defeated Republican President George H.W. Later on, the United Kingdom, Prince Charles and Lady Diana separate. They divorced 4 years later, and details were told about her own infidelity and struggle with bulimia, as well as Charles' affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. Other events on 1993, the European Union is approved. The European Union is based on the rule of law. A treaty binds agreement between the European Union member countries. It sets out European Union objectives and rules for the institutions, how decisions are made, and the relationships between the European Union and its countries. Treaties are enhanced to make the European Union more efficient and more transparent. Then the NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Act, becomes law. It was signed by President Bill Clinton, and it was a trade pact between the United States, Canada, and Mexico where all tariffs and trade restrictions were virtually eliminated. On 2000, George Bush becomes president. He gets elected in one of the closest contested elections when he defeated Al Gore for president. Now we have finally get to the 21st century. Here, the terrorist attack on the United States occurred. The terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in New York was when the Twin Towers are hit by two jet airliners and collapse. Another plane hits the Pentagon and another one crashes in Pennsylvania. The attackers were Islamic terrorists from Saudi Arabia and Arab nations. It was financed attack by the Al Qaeda terrorist organization of Saudi fugitive Osama bin Laden. Also, President Bush declares war on terror. It begins bombing Afghanistan, troops are distributed, and the Taliban government collapses. Also, Hamid Karzai becomes Afghanistan's leader. Alright, the Copenhagen Summit is the United Nations Climate Change Conference where it promises to make a major change to prevent climate change happens. So in 2009 this happened. The stated goal of the Copenhagen meeting is to come up with a successor to the Kyoto Protocol, which is an international treaty aimed at decreasing emissions of four key greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur hexafluoride, also two groups of gases which are hydrofluorocarbons and perfluorocarbons. In 2010, it happened the event of the WikiLeaks revelations. This event is about a website that carried out the biggest leak of diplomatic documents in history, where it released 250,000 US diplomatic cables and made thousands of classified documents on the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Also, it happened the Greece debt crisis. Greece was badly exposed when the global economic downturn struck because of the years of unrestrained spending and failed financial reforms. Greece's national debt accumulated to 300 billion euros. Now we're going to analyze events of 2016 as when the Trans-Pacific Partnerships collapsed. And this partnership began and the deal took 7 years to negotiate because it was the largest regional trade deal in history. It came under fierce attack from the Democratic and the Republican presidential candidates. Foreign policies experts say China has now shot establishing the rules that will rule trade in the most dynamic region in the global economy. Another bigger danger is that trade liberalization may be now being retrieved, with consequences for countries around the world. It happened in Brexit, where Britons voted to leave the European Union. Britons voted 52 to 48% for leaving. The British government divorced from the European Union. The British Parliament turned to the Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty to start making the process of leaving the European Union. Another thing is that Russia interfered in the US presidential election, where the Russian operatives hacked email systems belonging to the Democratic National Committee. Also, Donald Trump wins the US presidency. On November 8, Americans selected him to the 45th president of the United States. He's the first president with no prior experience either in government or the US military. He voted to build a wall on the US-Mexico border and threatened to tear up major US trade agreements. He questioned the utility of America's alliances and generally denounced US foreign policy as it has been practiced by both parties over the past 3 decades. Okay, so globalization is the integration of national economies through trade, investment, capital flow, labor, migration, and technology. This resulting from the removal of barriers between national economies to encourage the flows of goods, services, capital, and labor. Another concept of this unipolar world is terrorism, which is the illegal use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of a political goal. It has been practiced by political organizations with rightist and leftist objectives, by nationalistic and religious groups, revolutionary state institutions such as armies, intelligence services, and police. It exists revolutionary, super-revolutionary, and establishment terrorism. The unipolar world. Unipolarity is when one state commands influence in the international system as a sole hegemon of the international order. Today we live in a unipolar world because the end of the Cold War meant that the previous decade's superpower rivalry now has ended. The United States surfaced as the only dominating power in world politics as there were no real challengers to their hegemonic position. Unipolar balance of power is robust. At present time, no state seems able to challenge the USA militarily. The digital era is characterized by technology which increases the speed and breadth of knowledge adjustment within the economy and society. The development of an evolutionary system in which knowledge change is not only very high but also increasingly out of human control, making it at a time which our lives become more difficult to manage. Now we are going to answer some questions, like why did globalization emerge? The source and cause of globalization lies in the development of technology. The cost of transport, of travel, and above all the cost of communicating information have fallen dramatically in the post-war period, almost entirely because of the progress of technology. Another question. In most cases, what caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? Nothing can justify terrorism, but the causes are to abolish completely a political system and to replace it with new structures. Also, the urge to modify the existing sociopolitical structure and to seize factions within the government and foreign governments or groups. Now the last two questions. How does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? Well, the end of the Cold War and the dissolution of the USSR on 1991 broke down the bipolar international system, and the unipolar system was established. With the end of bipolarity and the disappearance of obstacles between people, then occurs the emergence of a unipolar world, a world order based on globalization. The country that emerged as the superpower was the United States, and the power of state stopped being balanced and controlled by other states. This inequality permits the hegemon of unipolarity to influence and shape the rest of the world because the US had been considered the leading country in military forces, economy, and technology. The last question. How has the digital era influenced today's society? Well, digital platforms deliver immense value because it allows the world to connect, collaborate, and broaden people's minds, raising awareness about important issues, bringing people together for a common purpose, and achieving new breakthroughs. But these very same technologies can also cause people to feel isolated and disconnected, leaving them vulnerable to the malicious intent of the digital predator attack. The opportunity for users to fulfill the need for social interaction, entertainment, and learning is almost equal to the risk of impairment to cognitive, emotional, and behavioral development, and even mental health issues. Digital technology is extremely powerful.